Islamic State militants. They say they've partially broken the Islamic State siege of Mount Sinjar, where thousands of Yazidis and other displaced Iraqis have been trapped since August. Now, Jonathan Crone is the first reporter to actually reach Mount Sinjar, where he met fighters from some of the armed groups taking on the militants. He's now back in Baghdad. But I asked him, first of all, how important is this advance?
I think the gains are significant in as much as they show that the Islamic State is no longer able to stop the Peshmerga from advancing from the north southwards towards Sinjar, which is a big deal in and of itself. So far, they've taken a lot of positions on the north side of the mountain, coming from Rabia and Zomar as they planned. If they're able to hold that, I mean, it could potentially break the full siege on Mount Sinjar, but it's unclear at this point. Basically, all the major towns around Sinjar are still under Islamic State control, so I think we'll have to wait and see how effective this advance will be.
Right, and is there a sign of the Islamic State, fighting back, resisting strongly?
Not so much as far as I've seen. I'd heard some rumors in various areas, but it seems like there's just traditional, general firefights and the like. Doesn't seem to be massive resistance yet. But once again, it doesn't seem like the Peshmerga has advanced on any of the major cities or towns, in the area. So I think once you start advancing on the town of Sinjar itself, for instance, that will be a major battle, or at least bigger than what we've seen so far.
And what about the role of airstrikes in this? Are they playing a big part?
Yeah, it seems to me that they're playing a big part. The U.S. and coalition forces seem to think that they're playing a big part because they've invested a lot of time and effort into this. I think that's certainly the case. It's the Peshmerga advancing under the fire of the coalition forces. I think it should also be noted that a lot of the areas close to the mountain, particularly Sharfaddin Temple, which the Peshmerga keeps saying that they've secured, it's been secured since August 3rd, and it wasn't by the Peshmerga, it was by local Yazidi fighters led by a guy named Qasim Shasho. And the Peshmerga has repeatedly taken credit for the work of local Yazidi tribal fighters on the mountain, calling them Peshmerga because they've taken weapons from the Peshmerga. I would be cautious to say that this is solely Peshmerga advancement. So I think this is largely a group effort from my understanding of the situation last time I was there.
And if I ask you to step back, just looking at the whole of Iraq, really, not just this area you've been to, what is the situation in terms of Islamic State holding on to territory? Is it basically a stalemate with the opposing forces, or how would you characterize it?
It depends on where you are. They have very, very strong gains in places like Anbar and Saladin. Those places, Tikrit, for instance, is the capital of Saladin province. Tikrit is certainly a massive Islamic State stronghold, and I don't see them losing that anytime soon, for instance. There's places like that. There's places like that all over. And then you've got places like Sinjar, which are not, I wouldn't necessarily call them strongholds, but which they've been able to fight everybody to a stalemate, in no small part because there's so many different groups and how they come along. So there are places like Sinjar which have been a stalemate for a while, then you've got places like Tikrit which are strongholds. But it doesn't seem like anybody's been advancing that much in recent days until very recently, particularly in the northwest where Sinjar is. So it's different all across Iraq, but the Islamic State is certainly still very strong.
And that was Jonathan Crone there, a reporter who's just been up to Mount Sinjar. Now, we're broadcasting live from outside the Red Mosque in Islamabad. To my right, the mosque itself, and then to my left, the protesters, anti-Taliban protesters. Between the two, there are riot police. We can see flashing blue and red lights and men in riot gear as they try to make sure that there's no problem here. I've just been joined by General retired Salah Massoud, a very well-known figure in Pakistan, and you've been looking at the protest. What do you think of it? This is quite unusual for Pakistan.
Well, I think it was so necessary, and I'm so glad that they're protesting, because you can't continue to have a state where it doesn't take any action against such like people who are promoting violence and radicalism in the society and living right in your midst, and also using their religious culture to propagate radicalism and extremism in the country and eroding its very foundations.
Well, I spoke to one of the young men going to pray in the mosque a couple of hours ago. He said it's their right to speak their opinion. That's democracy.
But that's true, but there is a limit to democracy. Democracy doesn't mean that you tear the society and you don't damage the society. You don't give protection to people who are committing terror. So that is not democracy. Democracy means that you also protect human life. Human rights are very important we must give freedom of expression, but it doesn't mean that you take it to that extent that you are able to sort of even destroy the whole basis of the state and there is no law and order, and you sort of impose your will.
Okay, we'll hear more from you later in the programme. For the moment, thanks very much to you, General Talat Massoud. You're listening to the World Service of the BBC, broadcasting from Islamabad.
We have the headlines.
Democracy protests have spread to new parts of Hong Kong.
But we go further.
I am on a pedestrian walkway looking down into the sea of people that have taken to the streets here. People as far as the eye can see, thousands of them.
Telling it how.
Border between Turkey and Syria, and within the last few minutes, two very large boats just a few hundred meters from where we were standing.
Giving people a voice. By trying to step positive. Although I was scared and seeing relatives dying in front of me. Nothing to look at.
The Liberian President, Aram has appealed to all countries to help fight the Ebola virus.
It is the duty of all of us to send a message that we will not leave millions of West Africans to fend for themselves.
BBC Service. The World's Radio.
BBC World Service. This is Owen Bennett-Jones with a special edition of News Hour, broadcasting live from Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. We're just outside the Red Mosque in the centre of the city, known as the most radical mosque here in Islamabad. And outside there are protests with demonstrators demanding an end to the Taliban. More coming up.
An enemy has been slain.
BBC News. Football's world governing body FIFA has agreed unanimously to have a result in electoral corruption in the bidding process for the next two World Cups. But the FIFA president said he must be called in appropriate form, and only after investigations into named individuals were over. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned that a new US law authorizing further sanctions against Moscow could undermine relations for a long time. US and European sanctions coupled with falling oil prices have thrust the Russian economy to crisis. Oil workers in Nigeria have suspended a strike over the poor state of the finance and other infrastructure. The two main unions say that the amount of demonstrators the Nigerian economy is heavily dependent on oil exports has been badly affected by the oil price increase. 8 children have been found dead at a house in the Australian state of Queensland. The bodies of the children, aged between 18 months and 15 years, were discovered by police after they received a report that a woman was killed. An Australian Bar Association said lawyers who acted for the gunmen before the fatal siege in Sydney earlier this week have received death threats. Aram was on the hospital cafe, having charged with sexual offences and conspiring to kill his former wife. Authorities in the Chinese territory have prevented a group of opposite activists from entering the city. The demonstrators in Hong Kong have wanted to raise the issue of universal suffrage during a visit to Macau by the Chinese president. Somalia's football season starts today in the capital Mogadishu. The first match will take place in a stadium that was a training base for Al-Shabaab, and it controlled the city. BBC News.
BBC World Service. This is Owen Bennett-Jones with a special edition of News Hour, broadcasting live from Pakistan. Now, the Peshawar school massacre left over 130 children dead. A similar number were injured, some seriously. Virtually all of those had gunshot wounds. And yesterday I went down to a military hospital in Peshawar to see some of the survivors and one of the doctors looking after them. Well, I'm in the place where over 100 children came, and that's the main hospital, well, at least the biggest hospital nearby in Peshawar. And I'm with Captain Raheel now, and you're a surgeon? Yeah, I'm a surgeon. So here's the young lad here. Hello, how are you? You're fine? Well, you're smiling. And so what's your name? Mohammed Ibsa. And what happened to you? You've got a damage, you broke your arm, or? Yes. I'm really... You got two
I am serious.
Well done. He wasn't smiling as he looks on. Very satisfactory patient.
These are all young patients, and young patients do have a tendency to recover very fast.
Well, of course, we can see this. You've got fruit here with a sticker on it saying, with the compliments of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. That can't be too bad. The governor of KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, you've got something from him. You've got something from IGFC, that's the Inspector General Frontier Corps. Wow. And this, let me have a look at this one. Get well soon. To dearest Sunu, it's always nice to see a friend smiling. May Allah give you a long and healthy life and all your wishes come true. Always keep smiling. From your cousin, Amos Lloyd. And it says on it, get well immediately. so that you mustn't dawdle here. Thank you very much. Oh no, who have we got here? How are you? You're good. What's your name?
Sal.
And you've got a bandage on your side of your head there. What happened?
Yeah, I've been
Bit of your hair there. How old? So this is both sides. And did you come close to the attackers?
Yeah, they were listening at us and they started shooting. I was like way too close to them. And they started running.
When you looked at the people who were doing it, could you tell what sort of people they were? Were they from Pakistan? Were they from abroad?
They were tall, they were broad, they had beards.
So you're 17 and you've been an inch. What does that make you think?
That's the most terrifying, but at the same time, like, there's amazing things that happened. I got this close to that, and yeah, I came back alive.
Well done. You seem in terribly good spirits.
I'm not good. I mean, the worst is behind me. I can look on the bright side.
A couple of brave young lads in the hospital, very much Aram, after their very close shave in the school. Well, we're still here outside the Red Mosque, and earlier I spoke to one of the young men going to pray here. He was on his way to Friday prayers. He said he didn't want to be named. He wouldn't want to have been pictured, but he was okay to talk on the radio. And as you've been hearing, there is controversy about what the Mullah of the mosque said in relation to the shower attacks, failing to condemn them. I asked him what he thought about the controversy surrounding that.
They are trying to focus on specific things in the clip. They are cutting the clip and they are focusing on that.
Talking about the TV clip of the Malana here who was saying he couldn't condemn the Taliban.
Yes, he condemned it several times. If you can hear it on the yesterday's program, Kal Tak on Javed Chaudhary, he condemned it 100 times.
Right, so you're saying he was taken out of context?
Yes, that was it.
But he's saying very radical things right now. We can hear him talking about the country's brutal rulers and condemning all the politicians.
He is condemning this system, and he's right to condemn. He can say what his views are. He's saying what he believes in. This, you say this is a democratic country. Why can't we express our opinions? He's expressing his opinion, and you don't like that. When someone else says something against us, that is, you say, practice of democracy and other things. Why you condemn one side and forget about the drone attack and many children died there, then why don't you condemn that side? He said, I condemn both sides. He didn't say that I don't condemn Peshawar attack.
Right, and you're going in for prayers now? What do you expect in 5 minutes when the civil society people say they're going to be here?
I'm saying that, tell me what's their agenda. If their agenda was to get condemnation, it has already given by him.
Well, I think their agenda is to have a country where there are no more bomb attacks. I mean, that's what they want.
You also want that, but we say that this country was made on the name of Islam and we want Islam here. This is what are the basis of this country. And we are struggling for that. That is our view.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me. Time for prayers. Thank you. So there we are. That gives you just some little vignette of the tensions that have arisen here in Pakistan as a result of the Peshawar school attack. It has released feelings that were not really being expressed as clearly as this before. We'll just have to see where it goes. You join us again live outside the Red Mosque in central Islamabad, and I'm joined by Cyril Almeida, very well-known columnist in Pakistan, writes for the Dawn newspaper, and General Khalaf Massoud, another well-known media figure, quite often on the SAT TV channels here, giving his tension points of view on various topics as they come up. And there are big topics here because of the Peshawar massacre, because of the comments of the Maulana in this mosque here, where he seems to fail to condemn them, although there was that challenged by one of his faithful. And now these protests. And Cyril, you've just been down in the last 5-10 minutes to have a look at what's going on beyond the police line in the protest. What are they chanting? What are those billboards I can see saying?
Well, largely condemning the Taliban and the Peshawar attack, and there's one particular phrase or chant that's become famous in Pakistan. Loosely translates into anyone who's a friend of the Taliban is a traitor to Pakistan, and that's kind of what they're chanting down there right now.
Yes, General Massoud, you were listening to that young man saying that the Maulana here, the mullah, was taken out of context, and that he wasn't failing to condemn the Peshawar attack. So what do you make of that?
Well, the problem is that, this mosque is also known for harboring terrorists, so people with an extremely radical view. And its servers are extremely radical. And there are also reports in the past that we know they have a history where they had all these terrorists, they had so much of weapons, they had so much of, even sort of bombs and this, that, and the other at one time.
Inside the mosque?
Inside the mosque, and that is why the government and during General Musharraf's time had to conduct a very major raid of the mosque. So there is a history of radicalism and extremism as far as this mosque is concerned.
One thing that I must say did surprise me a bit, just hearing that it was Abdul Aziz who was making these comments, still running the mosque. I mean, in fact, despite that bloodshed and an extraordinary siege back in 2007 of this mosque, the state didn't manage to get new management to it.
Not just that, the state actually rebuilt the entire premises, and there's active funding from the state and Islamabad authorities for this mosque and for its madrasas and its other activities in the city. It's quite extraordinary. It's hard to explain how this is possible in the heart of Islamabad, the seat of Pakistani power, just a stone's throw from our parliament. But this is the context of the jihad complex in Pakistan and its strength.
Well, actually, it also shows the weakness of the state, which has always been there. And that means they are prepared to compromise for political reasons, for expedient reasons. The previous government, in fact, and this government, I'm not so sure it would have acted any differently, in fact, gave money for building this mosque and also rehabilitated everyone who had been charged.
Now, Cyril, there's another bit of evidence of the sort of, the strange compromise that the state makes here. Your column this week is about, potentially another very big name in military being put on bail.
Yes, Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, who was charged by the Pakistani state for complicity in the Mumbai attacks of 2008, was yesterday granted bail by an anti-terrorism court in Pakistan. This is frankly extraordinary and astounding. This trial has been going on for 5 years. It has gone nowhere. Every time the hearings are adjourned, and yet suddenly in the week that Peshawar happened, you see that Mr. Lakhvi gets bail from this anti-terror court. Nobody can explain it. I'm sure that the court will claim that it's gone by the letter of the law, but anyone who's in Pakistan who follows these events all over the years, that certain things don't happen without the sanction of the state or the establishment as it's known out here.
Now, the mosque loudspeakers have come into action in a fairly definitive way, so I hope that people can hear us clearly still. It's just a few hundred yards from us. What did you make of that bail decision? Because people here do say that the courts basically fail to rein in militants even when they're presented right in front of them.
Well, I think it's extremely disappointing and frustrating when you find that the courts are either scared, and because of that they are giving them the bail, which is simply